There we go. Okay, hey everybody. So I was just getting everything set up for our interview. It's going to be fantastic. I'm already having a great conversation with Mark Maxwell. Before we get into that, I do have to mention that on April 28th, I will be one of the featured speakers at the Liberty Weekend for the College Libertarians and College Republicans at Binghamton University. I will be speaking on the 28th at 2 p.m. talking about the red flag legislation, gun control, the impact on New York and the nation, and of course taking your questions as well. This is open to the public. It is free, and the media is invited as well, as always. So I'm looking forward to that. And if you are in Binghamton region, please do drop by our friends at the Belmont Pub and the Park Diner. That's not a paid advertisement. They're just my friends, and I like their food. I like their establishments, so please drop by. But I am looking forward to seeing you at the Liberty Weekend. So without further ado, I want to, especially since there we go, lost my glasses for a second. So folks, I want to take a moment, and as I mentioned, we have Mark Maxwell. He is one of the co-founders of RW Arms, which is out of Fort Worth, Texas. And on the screen, some people may be seeing that they have filed a lawsuit against the government on April 8th because of the bump stock laws. Now, before we get to that, Mark, I want to make sure you can hear us all fine there?
Yeah, I sure can, Michael. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. The first thing I always like to do is for people who are not familiar, let's start off first of all. Who are you and your co-founder, Mike Stewart? Who are you guys? What made you do this?
Well, obviously, there's a business opportunity there. We are both actually pretty good friends with the founder of SlideFire, and Jeremiah holds all 19 patents. So as he was moving out of the business, we decided to jump in. All three of us, and myself and Michael, let's talk about the two co-founders here of RW Arms, both veterans. Michael was a 60 pilot with an ungodly amount of combat hours in Iraq. I was Marine, served in D.C., and then I got to go have a little fun as they sent me around to shoot some competitions and some other training stuff through the years.
I like that. Well, hey, every Marine is a basic marksman, and we all know that. But it sounds like you're way better than most of us, probably better than me at this point.
That's always up for debate. Anyone can have a good day.
That's for sure. That's for sure. I did make series high shooter back in basic. I remember that.
And you still remember that. That's good.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Hey, got to be in front of the entire platoon as we graduated. It was a good day. You always remember the good days of the basic.
Yeah.
And as many people may be familiar, I served in the reserves in the Marine Corps. So Semper Fi to you and to all of our brothers across the world, no matter where they are, no matter when you served, especially if you're serving right now. So I did want to throw that out there. So you guys had the opportunity. You said, let's get into this. You're obviously, you know the environment that we're in. RW was started when? RW Arms was started what year? I forgot.
2018, early 2018, we started as a firearms accessory and components company. We didn't have the ability to take over the inventory that SlideFire, Bumpfire Systems, and Fostak had left in their inventory until the dominoes started to fall that way. SlideFire decided it was not going to retail anymore. Product was not going to manufacture anymore. That was the first. Bumpfire Systems was right behind it. And then Fostak put us in line to take over 100% of their inventory as they moved into production for the Echo 2 trigger, which is their binary trigger.
Okay. I'm following you on this, and let me backtrack on two things. Okay. One, because I know I get yelled at about this a lot. What does RW stand for?
It's actually an homage to my dad. if you look at the emblem for RW Arms,
Yeah.
it is it's a Marine Corps font for the RW, but the arms is actually the same font as the Army.
Right.
My dad was a combat vet in Korea, and when I started this, it was a nice homage to him. Is really where it comes from.
Ah, okay. And I had that on the screen. I wasn't sure. Okay.
Well, we don't share that very often. We actually now have converted that over into right wing arms, so that's why our emblem is the right wing of an eagle.
Okay.
But everyone knows us for rapid fire weapons.
Okay. I like right wing arms better, personally. But if I didn't ask you that, somebody was going to say that to me.
Absolutely, we don't get asked that very often either. So,
I'm known for being detail oriented. So if I didn't say that, someone would be screaming at me about it. But getting more into the actual arms, the accessories, and people can go to your website. I've had that up, and I'll be happy to show it again here in just a second. So a lot of people are not familiar with what most of these items are. And the environment that's out there right now. People tend to think of it as it's scary, that all these pieces, all these items, they're all deadly. Every single piece is just some kind of weapon or something. And I'm showing your website and some of the items that you have there, the accessories. But the reality is they're just normal. Am I right?
They're just inanimate objects.
Exactly. They're just pieces of metal. Some of them are decorative. Some of them are functional. But that's no different than if you're detailing or upgrading a car.
Yeah, that's actually a really good example. One easy way to describe what we do as a company is if you go out and buy a new Ford pickup and you need your brush guard, tinted windows, toolbox on it, you take that to a separate company. You don't order that through Ford. And we are that company. So bump stocks did make sense. While they were 100% legal, we'll always be on the white side of a black and white line. Optics, triggers, magazines, those are all important to include all the little accessories that go along with that. And there's a fair business for, a smaller company like ours. It's a fair business to be in.
No, and everyone should be able to be in the business they want. I mean, that's entrepreneurship built our nation. That's one of the biggest things. And whether it's the cotton gin or aftermarket auto parts, that's how we grow. And people innovate off of that as well. So it's always to be encouraged. And that's why our unemployment rate is so low at 3.8%. Because small business owners like yourself create jobs in these niche markets, and everybody builds from there. Everyone forgets, Steve Jobs, both Steve Jobs and Microsoft were both niche small companies at one point. So that's a little off the side there, but anyway. So knowing that you're walking into this kind of environment in the world, where we have in America, where we have so much emphasis on gun control. Did that ever concern you guys?
Obviously it's something we have conversations about internally. I'll tell you that, I can talk till I'm blue in the face about the Second Amendment, my beliefs in that, everything else. I'm sure there's people screaming at your radio right now. But there is always going to be a segment of folks who just don't like the Second Amendment. That's a personal opinion. They just don't like it. But there's another segment that gets talked about very seldomly, and that's the part that say they do support the Second Amendment, but that but part they add in there actually contradicts that one small statement in the Second Amendment that says shall not be infringed.
Critical.
So that's our side of the clear line right there.
Yeah, and that's very clear, and I think it's one of the most important things. Shall not be infringed. And I think people forget that far, far too often. So let's actually talk about what's happening with your company now. I know that and I was just talking in the last segment a little bit about this, preparing for this, talking about bump stocks and talking about the way it's being seen. Because back in 1934, with the National Firearms Act, we got a very clear definition of what is an automatic weapon, what is legal and not legal to have, what's a machine gun, as an example. And I think a lot of people think of a bump stock as something that would turn a regular semi-automatic rifle, which is not automatic, even if the Democrats and Pelosi want to say that, or Feinstein, they're not. And adding a bump stock doesn't make it a machine gun, as I understand, and I want to make sure you're the expert here. But people misunderstand that.
Oh, of course. You and I were both in the Marine Corps. We understand an automatic weapon. You can pull the trigger one time, hold it, and it's going to fire multiple rounds. Whether for us it was 3-round burst. Right. You might have caught the very tail end of the automatic.
No, we had gone to a full 3-round burst at that point.
Yeah. So, but the 60s, 50 cals, everything else, those are fully automatic. Oh yeah. There is no way to fire a semi-automatic weapon with a bump stock, with one hand, with one trigger, pull, and have it shoot multiple rounds. It's not how it's designed. You have to firmly hold the gun with 2 hands. You pull the gun away from you while simultaneously holding the stock tight against your shoulder. Your finger is on a finger rest. When you're pulling the front half of the gun forward, the entire gun, not technically forward, when there's recoil, it comes back just far enough to reset that trigger. As it resets that trigger, you're still pulling forward. So technically, you're pulling the gun forward into your trigger finger each shot. Okay. Now that can be done at a faster cycle rate, but no faster than it could if you could just pull the trigger. Obviously, we know competition shooters, we know demonstrative shooters that go out and do these demos where they can shoot incredibly fast. Jerry Milichek is one of them that we all think of.
Yeah, and they're incredibly fast, and it's true. Now, I mentioned in the earlier segment, and please clarify for me if I'm right, one of the reasons why there are bump stocks is if you see someone, and I think you've seen it in Wild West movies, the Beast movies, where someone will just press their finger against a trigger and keep pressing it quickly, or they'll use a stick, or you can use a belt. There's a lot of ways to do it where you can just push the trigger, pull the trigger quickly, but that's not accurate. That's not safe. And I know I even had one of my listeners ask me the question, isn't that why bump stocks were made?
So absolutely. Bump firing is a form of firing any semi-automatic weapon. Typically, it is done from the waist level. It's held very loosely with the back hand. Typically you've got some kind of rest. It can be a stick. It can be a belt loop. Belt loops aren't going away. Bump firing is not going away. Bump stocks just offer the safest, most controlled way to bump fire a weapon.
Okay. So I did want to make sure that I got that right. And I have, as you mentioned, I'm familiar with firearms. I fire myself. Yep. So I just want to make sure, because people don't get it, and they may not, so I'm sure detractors will say, well, Mike, you're not an expert. So I wanted to go to an expert and clarify that. But let me ask you this. So you had 73,000 bump stocks, okay, as part of the company, as part of your inventory.
Yep.
The law comes down, and now bump stocks cannot be sold.
We actually had tens of thousands more than that. We sold them off through the last few months. We did shut down sales when we knew there was a very good chance it was going to come through. We were actually asked by the ATF to hold off until the very last day, midnight. That way, any of the court cases, there were 2 injunctive cases, one by Firearms Policy Coalition, mm-hmm. and the other by a great group, GOA, Gun Owners America. Mm-hmm. And Gun Owners America have a great lawsuit in Michigan. So they were waiting on 2. The Firearms Policy Coalition actually got heard by the Supreme Court. It got in front of them. Judge Roberts decided not to make any kind of ruling until it was officially heard by the Supreme Court. And that happened just literally hours before that time ran out. So ATF asked us to hold off on that, and then we escorted 73,400 bump stocks to the recycling center, American Recycling Center here. And we had their shredding division that was, we went to them because they were used to having to shred and destroy firearms here for the Fort Worth Police Department.
Okay.
And they handled everything. It took us about a day to move all nine truckloads over, and we got them destroyed throughout the course of one day. So, which
is a sad waste of really good parts. But here's the thing, and I know just like with anything in gun control, it's never just the one thing. It's never just, the promise of you'll be safe if we get rid of the guns. There's always, like with the red flag legislation, violation of the 8th Amendment, the 15th Amendment, the 4th Amendment, in the storage laws, violation of the 4th Amendment. There's always collateral and additional things that are being taken away from us in our rights. In this case, you're talking about your 5th Amendment rights being removed and negatively impacting you financially as well, right?
Right. Yeah, we're very, very fortunate that we're in a position we are. I think, that was a loss, a single day loss well in excess of $20 million. Wow. I think there are, ask any of your small business owners, first year of ownership, up and running, who would have been able to survive that loss. Luckily, we are. We went back and looked at numbers. It accounted for about 40% of our total business. So we still have a healthy business model, and we will continue to move forward with all those other products while we're still fighting that, not only on the Second Amendment side, but what you just were speaking of, that Fifth Amendment fight. This is clearly a Fifth Amendment takings case, and that's why it's filed in D.C. So we're going to see how that goes. We expected an answer from our complaint on the 11th. We get the briefs on the 12th. That actually looks like they were given 14 more days now to respond. So I'm not sure why the government needed 14 more days, but that's where we sit right now.
Well, I think this also highlights a big problem in our government, often, especially lately, where we have laws are being passed without any consideration of what are the consequences. As I always like to say, and my listeners have heard me say it before, and then what? And then what happens? And I think this is a great example of it. So businesses are being affected, and there will be an impact on individuals as well. But in terms of your business, $20 million, which is no small amount, and they never considered, and how's this going to affect business? How's this going to affect the people who work for us?
They actually did. So
did they?
Ironically, with this whole change of a rule, not even a law, there was no legislation set in place. This change of a rule.
Right.
The DOJ's report said that it would be $100 million impact to the industry. The industry was controlled 100% by myself and Michael Stewart.
Okay. So it's amazing to me, though. But when I'm thinking of the consequence, they're not thinking of, well, who's paying for this? Or how are we? The government's responsible. This is the government pushing themselves and interjecting themselves into small business, which I disagree with completely. That's my personal point of view. And so therefore, you would think you should be getting some kind of compensation, and they should have actually thought about it beforehand. But I mean, it's like almost like a domain, eminent domain. The government is forcing an action, and you should be compensated, and they should have considered that well beforehand. So there should be punitive damages on top of the damages that they did to you.
That's not anywhere in our case.
No. Okay.
I think that under different circumstances, I would agree with you wholeheartedly. We're not going for revenge. We're not going for vengeance. We're just going to be compensated at market value.
See, that's fair. That's really nice of you, because I would go personally, I'd go full throat after everything. So this isn't even, you're not even asking for the things I'm suggesting. You're saying, no, it's just be fair.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, something that I've never brought up on an interview, I'm not sure if my business partner has, that when we sign the oath to defend our Constitution,
yes,
that oath never ends for me, never ends for my business partner, and for yourself probably, and many others. And for us to have to sue the government to have our constitutional rights that are clearly defined respected and followed, I never thought in a million years I'd be where I'm sitting. Never, ever, ever. I thought at some point there would be an injunction, things get reworded. This could have worked out so many different ways. We're kind of in shock that it's happening this way.
No, I can understand that, and every time I see, there's over 22,000 gun control laws and regulations out there, another 128 in just the last year, this being one of them. And I live in New York State, where we have the SAFE Act. Now we have red flag laws. We have a storage safety law. Not one of them are actually making anyone safer. Not one of them actually addresses the true issues, but it's fear-mongering, in my opinion. But I hear it every time. Every time there's these laws, I keep hearing people who are going, and look at what's happening to me. Look what's happening to my business. Have any politicians come out and actually spoken to you about this, or even suggested, either before or since, how can we make better laws? How can we better protect the public while respecting rights?
Well, no, but partially that's because we're positioned in the industry, I'm guessing. Mm-hmm. We were that low-hanging fruit that they could say, okay, we'll give you this, so it looks like we're doing something, and that keeps the meat, left behind, the larger portions of the industry. So we never thought that we'd hear from anyone, although through the woodwork we have gotten a ton of support behind the scenes.
Well, I think you deserve a lot more upfront praise and support for what you're doing and why you're doing it and what you believe. I think these are all important things that should get more attention in the media. That's why as soon as I saw you were available, I was like, no, I want them on immediately. I didn't give you guys a lot of notice beforehand. I was like, no, they've got to be on. Let me ask you, for people who are interested in following this and more importantly, being able to help support you, because I know this has got to cost a lot. I mean, it's a government lawsuit. These things are expensive. And is there a way that people can help you with that?
Absolutely. So once again, we're in that very unique position where we don't need a GoFundMe. We don't need donations. We don't need any of that. In fact, we donate to charities. About 20% of our total profit goes right back to local and veteran charities. So the only thing we would ask is that you sign up for any email on rwarms.com, that you purchase anything. If you're going to buy anything anyway, please at least give us an opportunity to earn your business. And then we have a blog there that will have all the newest updates on what's going on with this. So even those who aren't concerned about the Second Amendment issues here, they should still be very concerned about the Fifth Amendment issues, and this is a direct Fifth Amendment case.
Okay. I'm glad. And by the way, you mentioned charities. I always love to mention the charity, especially if it's for the veterans. Is there a specific charity that you guys help out with?
Yeah, there's a great one. I was just talking with the founder, Scott Haley. It's Roughnecks and Rednecks. And I know it sounds goofy. These guys go out anytime there's a large emergency or disaster, and they get everyone together from the country, and they go out and they kill wild hogs. When they do, they take them in, slaughter, clean them, go in, and they go out and feed those in need, first responders, those without power, those without water. And they do that everywhere that they can possibly get to. It's a great charity. It takes care of a huge nuisance we have here in Texas while feeding those in need.
Okay. I'm glad that you mentioned it. I always like to promote great charities that are working, especially when they help first responders, veterans, the people in need. We can never say enough about them. So I'm glad you brought it up. And I will look up Roughnecks and Rednecks. I will
Oh yeah,
include
their
that
Fourth of
link.
July party is going to be a lot of fun. Wade Bowen headlining, Ricky Gervais co-headlining. They just got in William Clark Green. I know some of y'all folks up in New York won't know who those names are, but a lot of other people will.
That's all right. I have an audience everywhere. It goes international.
Oh, very nice.
So people will be able to see it, and I'm sure more of them know it than I do. You're right. So we've got about 2 minutes here, and I always like to ask this at the end of any interview. Is there any aspect of anything that I may have missed that you wanted to address while we have the chance to the audience there, to anything you'd like to tell them?
Not really, other than the state of New York had very unique laws.
That's one word.
They run things slightly differently than most other states.
Yeah.
And until the federal law superseded state law, you could own a bump stock in New York. We chose not to sell any into New York, but you could own it into New York. You could own it in New York. It just couldn't be installed on a firearm.
Right.
And I always find those kind of laws very interesting, that is their solution. So one, they don't have to do what Washington did with the $150 per unit buyback program that they had for, I think it was for the first 1,000 people who turned them in. Also, speaking of numbers and turn-ins, there have been almost none turned in. Obviously, we're the largest, but there's been almost no others turned in. And we know the DOJ's numbers are somewhere around 500 to 580,000 bump stocks on the market.
Right.
We know for a fact that's about 1 million and as high as 1.2 million bump stocks in the U.S. right now.
Wow. So they don't even have an understanding of the scope of what's going on here.
I don't know how they couldn't. So, but we took all the companies we knew that had ever made them and just asked them what their general numbers were, and we're easily at 1 million. So,
wow.
Obviously, all they had to do was call and ask the same.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Well,
and then if I can just add one more thing.
Of course.
We so the privacy of our customers is absolutely paramount long term. I know there's been something very concerning to a lot of people, that when we handed over bump stocks to the ATF to have them destroyed, we had to hand over our customer list. It's something that never did happen. I know there's been some people who have misreported. There's been a lot of
I didn't even see
bad
that
reporting out there. But the privacy of our customers is paramount, and that's something we will fight to the Supreme Court if needed. We're prepared to do that at this point.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I had not seen that reported. I don't think anyone would expect that to happen. And I'm glad to hear that you guys are willing to stand by the customers and stand by privacy rights, because that's what should happen. Absolutely. So, Mark, I know we're over time now. I'm into my associate's time on the show, but I want to say, first and foremost, thank you, Semper Fi. I'm going to be following this closely. I plan to have you guys back as soon as there's more developments. I would love to have you back on again, talk more about this. And one of these days I got to get down to Texas. I just got to.
Yeah, Michael, thank you very much for having me on. Semper Fi, brother. And just if there's anything you need, you've got my number. Feel free to just give me a call.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, sir.
I thank you. And you guys be well. Keep fighting the good fight. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank y'all.
All right. Bye-bye. All right, folks. And as I mentioned, this has been a great show. We're over time, so I'm going to get off in just a moment. But I do want to thank you for joining us here at the Exceptional Conservative Network. I want to tell you guys, you are a great audience. I hope you enjoyed this. I look forward to seeing the feedback. I'll have full descriptions of all the sites in the description. You'll see it on YouTube and Facebook. And until the next time, I thank you. I apologize to my associates for being over time. And we'll talk to you again on Tuesday at 1 p.m. on No Soundbites Allowed on the Exceptional Conservative Network. Thank you.